Welcome to the Redeemed Backslider with your host, Kathy Chastain, Christian-based psychotherapist and redeemed backslider. This podcast is dedicated to those who have wandered but are ready to return to the life-changing power of grace and the freedom found in Jesus.
Hi, welcome to the Redeemed Backslider. I'm your host, Kathy Chastain. I'm a Christian-based licensed marriage and family therapist, and I'm also a redeemed backslider. With me today is Keri McPhaill-Rodriguez. So thank you for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So Keri, we're going to jump right in, by the way. We grew up together, but I don't really know you. I feel like growing up in church, there was a lot of people that was in the peripheral, but we didn't really know each other.
Yeah.
You know, we see each other at church, and I don't know why that is. Today, it's still strange. The people that I have known and seen for many, many years, I just really don't know them.
Yeah.
So I don't know really your story at all, other than your dad and mom was the pastors of our church since, our church split many years ago when I was a kid. So I always like to start with getting to know a little bit about what life was like for you as a preacher's kid, growing up in a pastor's home and going to church morning, noon, and night, 7 days a week, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Exaggerating, but that's
Not
what
really.
it felt like. Yeah, that's what it felt like for us as kids,
Yeah,
right?
it did.
So tell me a little bit about childhood, what it was like for you growing up in a pastor's home.
Okay. I will tell you now, I took it for granted.
Mm-hmm.
It was special, and I never really looked at it like that. I was just, like you said, we went to church, it seemed all the time. Like we didn't have time to do anything fun. We were at church a lot, but I did enjoy church.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I just took it for granted though. I didn't really enjoy church like I should have. It was more of a social event, especially, when you get older and you're a teenager, you want to go see your friends, you want to hang out at church, you weren't there for, me wasn't there for probably the right reasons, which I feel is one of the things that led me to kind of falling away, because I didn't really have the relationship with God that I should have. And I looked at church more of like a social event, but it's
a way of life for you,
absolutely.
Right? Yeah.
And I definitely, again, took it for granted. I know I say that word a lot, but I took it for granted. I didn't really get into church like I should have and nurture my relationship with God. So when the older I got and being in a public school, you see your friends doing all these fun things and, you're going to church and you start to be envious of them because they're out having fun and you're going to church.
Yeah.
And that's kind of when it started, probably was in high school. Maybe, 8th and 9th grade, I think is when I really started noticing, that I wasn't really that interested in going to church anymore.
Yeah.
I still went. But, by the time I was 16, 17, I got pregnant with my daughter and my life just kind of changed. I did stay in church, but I just really just didn't have the relationship with God. And so then just gradually I've noticed myself just coming less and less, until I was completely out.
Were you at that time still living at home? Did you move out? I know you got married.
I did. When I got married, I did move out.
Okay. But before that, you felt like you were sort of slipping away.
Oh, yeah. High school was rough. High school was rough trying to juggle being in church and being with my friends and doing fun things with them.
How was your mom and dad with you? Because I went to public school too. That was sort of what was difficult for me is realizing how different I was in comparison to everybody else. That really bothered me a lot. So how was your mom and dad with you having what we would have called back then worldly friends, instead of church friends? Did you have friends in the church, or were they mostly in school?
I had a very close friend in church that, I hung out with a lot in high school too. But I also had friends in school. And so, and then my friend in church kind of was going along the same path as I was, where she was starting to hang out with her school friends more. And it kind of happened to both of us at the same time. Mm-hmm. So
neither of you could be a good influence on the other.
Not really.
And I guess without the relationship,
yeah.
I know that you would have felt the presence of God at church.
Yes.
Did you think at that time in your life that you did have a relationship with God? Did you consider yourself saved and all that? Did you, I know hindsight's 2020, but at that time, did you think that you were in a good place before you started falling away?
I want to say yes, but I think I knew. I kind of knew what I was doing. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of wanting to get out, to be honest. It was just easier. Mm-hmm. It was just easier. It's not always easy to live for God. Sometimes that is the harder path when you
I think it's always
stay
the harder
in church.
Path.
So I wanted to have a relationship, but I wasn't necessarily that concerned about it, to be honest. Mm-hmm. And I was more concerned, as most teenagers are. Yeah. I just wanted to just do fun things and have fun. And it wasn't like it was anything bad, but it wasn't anything that was going to help my relationship with God. Mm-hmm. I wasn't out doing horrible things, but, they weren't of God.
Right.
So
at least probably the way that we were taught.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So you feel like your motivation to kind of back away from church or God would have been for fun, not for boys, not for because you didn't feel like you fit in. It looked like it was more fun.
And I really didn't feel like I fit into the skirt thing bothered me. I'm sure, you as well. The skirt thing was hard. And now I'm like, why? Why was it so hard? But I'm an adult now. Yeah. So I don't care as much. When you're a teenager, those kind of things matter. And people ask you why you're different. Why do you wear skirts? Mm-hmm. Why can't you cut your hair? Why don't you wear makeup? Why don't you, they go through all these things. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I would always say I don't know because I just didn't want to get into it.
Yeah.
I don't know. My church
Did you know, or was it
I did know.
Your church says?
I did know.
Because I always felt like there was never a good enough reason.
Yeah.
Like Deuteronomy 5, I thought was, okay, there's a lot of things that's men's and women's apparel. Yes. I couldn't say it with conviction.
Yeah. Well, and I think now that I am an adult, I look back and I'm like, times are different now than they were in the Bible days.
Yeah.
I am going to say that. As far as modesty and what we can and can't do, I do truly feel like you have to follow your own conviction. Mm-hmm. And just read the Bible.
Right.
And follow your own conviction, not just follow your own conviction, read the Bible, because the scriptures do tell us to dress modest and, things that we shouldn't partake in and things like that. But, as a teenager, I didn't care.
Right.
I do now. I didn't care then. And I am a work in progress, but, I'm still struggling with some of those things as an adult, but I had been out of church for so long. It's hard to just snap back.
Right.
My relationship with God now is the strongest it's ever been in my life. And I'm working on myself with his help.
Yeah, I think we're going to be a work in progress till the day we die.
Yeah.
And I think with regards to things that we change, the closer we get to the Lord. And as you said, the more that we read the Bible, those things become a willingness of wanting, a desire to want to please him.
Yes.
A desire to want to just be holy because he is holy, and it's so much less about rule-based religion and more about an authentic love for God.
Absolutely.
And I think he does that in us naturally,
Yeah.
So, You weren't, do you ever feel like you got disenchanted with God as you were walking away from the church? Or do you feel like your lifestyle just began to change and so your lifestyle didn't really allow you to come to church?
Absolutely. Lifestyle.
Lifestyle.
I
Okay.
let myself get caught up and didn't care so much about going to church and strengthening my relationship with God. I just allowed myself to get caught up in the world. And like I said, I was never a bad person. I didn't do like horrible things, but it just became easier to do that rather than come to church and work on myself. And, I don't know. It just became less important. And it hurts me to say that, but it really did. It just became less important to me.
And I imagine over the years, how many years was it that you were away from church, away from the Lord, to when you came back?
Wow. A long time. I did, after I had my daughter, I did come back once or twice to church, but it was pretty short-lived. I think at one time I did come back for a few years, but then fell right back into the world. But probably because my daughter is in her late 20s. So I want to say a good probably 16, 17 years total away from God.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. And
actually maybe longer than that. Yeah, because I think the one time that I did come back for a few years, it was only like 2 or 3 years. So it's been longer. It's probably closer to the 20, 21 year mark.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Long time. And over that time, I imagine your mom and dad was inviting you to church because they're still pastoring.
Oh, I'm sure it broke. I know it broke their heart.
Yeah. What would you tell them when they would invite you and you didn't want to go?
I would just tell them that I might come because I couldn't, I knew it broke their heart.
Did your relationship with them suffer as you left?
I don't want to say yes, but it did change. It changed a little bit because my values were different than theirs. And, you always, they're your parents and I didn't want to hear it. And my parents were never, even though they were the pastors of the church, my dad and my mom never like made me feel bad about it. I know that they were just praying. Yeah. I know that they were praying for me. And sometimes that would irritate me.
Yeah.
It would. And
because why? Why do you think
Because I think in my heart, I knew I'd always be back and I just wasn't ready.
Okay.
I never like completely cut myself off from God. Like I would still pray. I mean, because what else do you do when you're struggling? What else do you do when you're sad? What else do you do when you pray? And I never lost that. But my prayers were a little bit less intense. They were more just like, God help me through this, but I still prayed. I never completely.
You never lost your faith.
No, I never did.
Yeah.
I never lost my faith. And that honestly is surprising to me. I never lost my faith and I always believed in God and I always, knew that this was right. But, I just allowed myself to distance myself.
Did you ever feel like you were lost or that you're going to go to hell? Did you ever worry that if you were to die in the place that you were at, that you would go to hell?
Absolutely.
Okay. So there's this feeling that I'm not saved.
No.
Yeah.
I knew I wasn't. Okay. And I know the Bible.
Did you know it growing up? I know you study a lot now. Did you feel like you knew it growing up?
I feel like I knew enough of it to let me know that I was not doing right. And I needed to be in church and I needed not just be in church. Cause I don't like that when people say that. You don't just need to come to church.
Exactly.
I needed a relationship with God.
Yeah.
and coming to church is part of that relationship, but it is not all that there is,
Right.
he has to
It's
live
empty,
in you.
really,
Absolutely.
if you're not going to have a walk with
Many
God.
people can come to church, including Pentecostal churches,
Right.
and not have a relationship with God and not be saved.
Right.
I mean, that doesn't, just because you come to church doesn't mean you're saved.
Right. Right.
Which I've learned. But, I always knew the Bible, and I knew the parts that were important. And I knew that if something were to happen to me back then, I would not have gone to heaven. And that scared me. I didn't like hearing about end time stuff and God coming back, and because I knew I wasn't saved.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
It's scary. It's a scary place to be.
And when I was going through that, because I assumed I was going to hell already because choices I was making, it sort of removed all boundaries in my case. And it was like, this sounds a little crass, I apologize, but like balls to the wall, like anything goes.
Well, what have you got to lose?
Right. Because you already lost.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel like you experienced that? Like, were you more willing to do things that perhaps you wouldn't have before because you already felt like you were lost?
Yeah, I would say so. And like I said, I never did anything really horrible, compared to some, terms of the world. But I was definitely more willing to try anything.
Yeah.
I mean, might as well.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so crazy. I feel like with me, I never lost my faith in God. I always loved him. I've said that many times. I loved him. I did have a relationship with him. I never knew how to live it.
Yeah.
Because I didn't, all of the legalism stuff. I know most people don't like that word, but it's just a different word for rules.
Yeah.
Really got in my way because I didn't have context for it. I have so much more now because one, I've been to Israel and I've seen a lot in how so much lines up with the Bible, and also, the modesty thing is huge, and I definitely lacked that for many years in my life. But I was in a business to where I had to promote all that crazy stuff.
Yeah.
But I definitely understand it now. But even in 1995, I got my life right with God, and I did all the things. I jumped right back in church, got into the choir after the 6-month probation, did all the dresses, no makeup thing. And I remember someone asking me again, how come you can't wear pants? And again, I was faced with the same exact answer that I had throughout my entire childhood. Well, because my church says I shouldn't. I never had a reason for myself. And, after that, I talked to the Lord about it. I'm like, God, I can't live something that is not, that I don't even understand. Because the Bible says, to have an answer for any question man asks you. I think it's in Peter, but I can't remember exactly how that scripture goes. But I remember thinking, I don't have an answer for the questions people ask why I do what I do. So I just thought, I'm going to walk this out with the Lord, do my best to live for him. I would just be who I was and allow him to convict me. And over time, I've gained a ton of understanding in some areas. And so I changed the things that I feel the Lord has given me understanding in, but again, it's not about church. It's about
yourself.
Wanting to please him.
And it's yourself.
Yeah. Right.
Exactly. And that is the best way. That is the best way to change.
Yeah.
And I have had conversations since I've, been coming back and trying my best to live my best life. And that's what I always tell people. You can't change. It has to be in here because I'm not going to just wear skirts because my church says I have to.
Right.
I'm not going to, because then it's not genuine.
Right. Right.
I'm going to dress modestly for my own, because I want to, because I'm changed.
Right.
Not because someone else tells me to.
Right. And modesty
has many different terms.
Yes.
I know.
I feel like it comes in many shapes and sizes because I have seen people that, attract attention to themselves, but they've
it's
got
not
all
just
the
skirts.
Exactly.
I know
right.
where you're going
yeah.
with this. It's not just, you can't just wear a skirt and be like, well, I'm dressed modest. Absolutely not.
And part of the reason that I'm having these conversations with kids like us who grew up in church is because I don't know about you, but for me, it was definitely a stumbling block for me to come back to my church. You know, I went to many other churches for a long time and gained some healing just going and sitting. I loved, my favorite thing to do is to go to church with my baseball hat covering my eyes, you know, jeans, flip-flops, and a t-shirt where no one would see me, no one would know me. I wanted just the privacy because I was really just there for God.
Yeah.
And so I went to other churches for a long time just to heal and to reconnect and to just be able to hear the Lord for myself. And when I would come to our church, Pentecostal church, the Spirit of God was there, but there were so many hindrances to me, you know, and it bothered me. And so I'd leave church having to work through all of these things that I just had to go through. Like I'd go up to the altar to pray because me and God are okay, right? And then people would think I'm a sinner, you know, and that was so hard for me. But over time, God had to teach me about that. I had to get okay with that and let people think whatever they want. But I'm having these conversations because I think there are hundreds and thousands of kiddos who grew up like us who will not deign to walk through the doors of a Pentecostal church, or other kids that grew up in their own church of origin who don't want to go back for similar reasons. And I want to bridge that gap that, you know, this has got to be between you and God alone. And where we go to get fed or where we go to get fellowship, it's that. It's not there to save us. It's there to be in community with, you know. But I think that you have to come as you are.
Absolutely.
Whatever that looks like.
Absolutely.
You know, and I don't think, do you feel like the judgment has changed since you've come back, or is that something that you feel like you've just had to work through on your own?
I'm not sure if it's the judgment has changed or if it's just that I'm older now and I don't care anymore. I don't care because I am working on myself. God is my judge and I don't care what anyone thinks.
It's a good place to be.
Yeah. And I hope that I stay here because it's a great place to be, because I'm not, when I come to church, I truly don't care what the person next to me is doing. And I don't mean that in a bad way. I'm there for myself.
Right.
And that may sound selfish, but right now I feel like I need to be there for myself because I'm still new. Yeah. I just came back, you know, it's been less than a year.
Yeah.
And I don't want to ever not feel how I feel right now when I come to church.
Good.
Because it's amazing.
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful for God's grace and his mercy. Yeah. And I thank him for it every day because without that, I don't know where I would be. Because, you know, we've heard people preach throughout the years, you know, that God, you know, there does come a time where he gives up on you and it's your last chance. And we've heard stories.
Yeah.
I was always so worried when I wasn't living for God that because I couldn't feel him anymore, that I wouldn't be able to. And you talk about being scared that you'll never feel God, his presence ever again. It really makes you think and reevaluate your life, because I would never not want to feel him.
Right.
That's scary.
Because it's so good.
It is. And it's a peace like no other. I mean, it truly is. It has helped me through my heartbreaks, through everything I've been through. I literally don't know where I would be right now without him, because he's healing me from the inside out. And I just am so thankful for that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a good word, Keri. That's a good word. So tell us about coming back. I know a little bit, I know some of the story, but I don't know the inside of you, what you went through in your relationship with God and yourself, and your decision to come back.
So we were actually, I remember this day. It was a day I remember. We were actually in San Francisco with Everly.
Tell the audience a little bit about that, because they don't know.
My grandbaby had cancer, and she fought cancer for a year and a half. And
God did many miracles.
He did. He actually gave us more time with her. I really do feel, he did give us more time with her. So I am so thankful for that, because she was almost 3 when she passed. And the doctors had told us multiple times that we were going to lose her, and, there was nothing more they could do. And then we would get a little more time with her. And so I'm thankful for the extra time we got with her.
Yeah.
But she had cancer, and she fought hard. She was a little fighter. But I'll never forget, we were feeling very desperate this one time. And I don't remember, the exact month it was. I just remember the feeling. We were at Family House, which is a place where families can stay when they have children that are in the hospital, UCSF. So I had called my dad and asked him to see if Jeremy could have the church pray for Everly, because it was a rough time. It was one of the last times that she was really fighting, and we thought we were going to lose her. We did end up getting a little more time with her again that time. But I had called my dad and said, I really need you to have the church pray. Like, I need them to pray, not just a little prayer. I want them to pray. I remember my words exactly. And my dad said, yes, of course, I'll call Jeremy. And so I decided to watch the service on YouTube that day.
Oh.
I'm going to cry, and they don't have Kleenex here. So I'm going to try not to cry, but I might. But I decided to watch the service on YouTube, and I had not done that. So I was watching the service, and the church was praying
just
for
like
Everly, just like I wanted. And I'm going to cry. I felt God so strong. And I was sitting in the kitchen at Family House, and I just lost it. Right there by myself in the kitchen, thinking I was by myself. People would have thought I was strange. But I just started bawling. And I felt the Spirit of God so strong. And I started speaking in tongues, and I had not spoken in tongues in years.
Wow.
And I was just so happy. I felt such a peace. And we had been going through a time with Everly, and it was so hard. And I just had not felt peace like that in a while. Mm-hmm. I didn't feel fear. I just truly felt like, God had it all under control, and whatever his plan was, whatever was going to happen, we would be okay. And that's hard to accept either or, right. Whether she stays here and she's able to be healed and stay here, or if he's going to take her, we didn't know. But I was at peace. Yeah. And I remember going back into the room we were staying at, and I told my husband, I'm going back to church. Mm. That day changed my life.
Watching the church care and love and pray for Everly.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
because
incredible.
I needed a support system.
Yeah.
I had one, and I didn't even know it.
Yeah.
I had one.
Yeah.
And those people at that church that I hadn't attended in years, it doesn't matter that my dad was the bishop, they cared enough for my grandbaby that they'd never met to almost dedicate an entire service in prayer for her.
Yeah.
It just changed my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that was the day.
Wow, that's incredible. I remember that service. I was there. But
it was amazing.
But I think that speaks so loudly to, people are watching. They are watching to see how much we care. And no one would have known that you would have been watching, or that event would have changed your life, because we just showed up to pray.
Yeah. And truthfully, I didn't even expect it to change my life.
Yeah.
I didn't feel one way or the other. I just really wanted the church to pray because that's how I was raised. We pray.
Right.
When we don't know what else to do, we pray. And even not being in church, I knew that.
Yeah.
We pray. And so I didn't even realize watching that YouTube service was going to change my own life.
Right, of course, right.
But I just felt such a peace that I can't even sit here and describe it to you.
Yeah.
How my fear, my anxiety, my everything about, possibly losing my precious grandbaby just melted away.
Nothing, only God could do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what did your husband say when you went in and said that?
Well, he looked at me and he just was like, what happened? Because I was a mess. I mean, I had been bawling for like an hour in the kitchen. And I said, nothing happened, but I'm coming to tell you that I'm going back to church. And regardless of what happens with Everly, I have to. I'm going back to church. And he said, I've been thinking the same thing. And we just hadn't talked about it. Yeah. Uh-huh. And then it was just, we just both started crying and praying in the room by ourselves.
Wow.
Like it was a change. It was a day that changed everything.
Keri, and you're so fortunate to have a husband that was willing.
Yeah.
Because I know Manuel grew up he didn't grow up in church. He came in as a teenager. I remember when he came in. I can't remember who brought him, but someone brought him to church.
Francis.
Oh, Francis is okay.
Yeah.
So I remember that. And then you guys got married pretty quickly after that. But, you've been out there in the world. I've been out there in the world. Marriage is tough.
Yes.
And marriages, especially when you don't have a walk with God, is so much harder, right? God sort of is the key that stabilizes and creates a common bond. But marriage is super hard when you don't have God at the center. And so for you to have a husband that was willing to join you and be supportive, that's pretty big.
Yeah. Well, and honestly, I didn't know how he was going to react. I was a little apprehensive because I didn't know. And we hadn't talked about church in a long time. Other than me telling him, my dad's going to have the church pray and they had prayed for Everly before. So it was like but that was the extent of our conversation about church. And so I didn't know how he was going to take it when I walked into that room and just told him I'm going back to church. I didn't say we need to go back. I said, I am going back to church. And I just kind of let it.
And in saying that he understood that you were making a commitment. Yes. It wasn't just, I'm going to go on Sunday. He knew what that statement meant. And you knew what that statement meant.
I am going back to church.
For good.
I'm going back.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like, me telling him, well, you need to go back to church with me, or we're going to go back to church, or, I made a decision for myself that I was going back to church after feeling, I had not felt that. Mm-hmm. And honestly, I don't know, even growing up in church, if I'd ever felt it like that.
Yeah.
I don't know if I had.
Yeah. I think, being older and mature, having better understanding of ourself really helps us to be able to put things in perspective.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So, tell me a little bit about what it's been looking like for you since you made that decision. What have you gone through? What are you facing as, relatively new baby Christian again in some ways?
Honestly, I've been through, obviously we lost Everly in June. We're coming up on a year. That was hard.
So the time frame between that day when the church prayed and when she eventually passed, how long was that?
I think it was like 2 months. Because I want to say that the church had that service in April, I want to say. And because that was when basically she was really having a hard time. And she never really bounced back from that one. So I want to say that was April. And then we lost her in June. And that was hard, but I was so thankful to have God in my corner because I couldn't have gone through that. I don't even want to imagine where I would be right now if I hadn't made that decision to come back.
Yeah.
And then we came back to church, and my mom was so happy.
Yeah.
And I'm going to cry again.
Yeah.
I'm just giving everybody a warning. I got to enjoy coming to church with my mom until we lost her this last December.
Yeah.
2 months ago.
Yeah.
And she was so happy that I was there.
Yeah.
And I'm so thankful that I got to enjoy that with her.
Yeah.
Because I know that she prayed so hard for us and me, and and she was. It was fun. It was fun going to church with my mom again.
Yeah. Years ago, I don't know when. Well, I've only been back to our church pretty much since Jeremy took the pastorship when your dad retired to become bishop. But I had told your mom, I knew you would be back. And even though I didn't know you, I knew what God had did for me.
Yeah.
And I wanted to encourage her and just let her know, God, I know that the prayers of parents for their children that God hears and he answers. And your mom just so easily looked at me and said, I know that God has promised me that she was going to be saved. God gave me a promise a long time ago. So your mom didn't live with fear or constant worry like some parents do, which I thought was wonderful. She just had the most confidence in God that he was going to bring you back. But what a gift. I think I've thought a lot since your mom died. The goodness of God to let her see it.
Absolutely.
Because Keith was here and his parents didn't get to see him come back.
And that breaks my heart for him.
And your mom got to see you, which was beautiful of God to give her that,
And that was one of the first things I thought of because we didn't expect to lose my mom when we lost her. She went into the hospital for another one of her, things. And we were like, oh, she'll be fine. She always
been here,
was.
done that.
Yeah,
right.
She was always fine. She wasn't fine that time. And one of the first things that I was like, thank you, God, that she got to see me come back to church.
Yeah.
Because I think I even said that at her service, because I know how important it was to her. Yeah. And he allowed her to see that and to experience it before taking her.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm so thankful for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I would have felt horrible if I had waited till after she passed to come back.
Yeah.
Because I would have lived with that guilt. Why didn't I just come?
Yeah. But Keri, and Keith said the same thing as why couldn't this have happened earlier? But God, I think God is perfect in everything he does. Mm-hmm. I do believe our free will plays a part, but God does use everything.
Yeah.
He uses every single thing that the enemy tried to use for evil.
Yeah.
And so I trust his timing and his ways, and so, I'm really glad that your mom got to see you come back.
Yeah, me too.
So I know that there is no greater thing when your mind is made up.
Yeah.
Your mind is made up. My mind is made up. By the grace of God, nothing is going to change that. But what has it been like for you? What struggles, what mental struggles, what do you feel like you've been going through in this new season of life you're in? What challenges come up for you? Not in your commitment, but just in
daily life.
Yeah, living.
I mean, this is going to sound, I don't have any.
Okay, good.
I feel like because if I do, I just feel like it's my flesh fighting me, and I just pray about it. And I know that may sound cheesy, but it is so true. Like, I don't allow myself to think, I don't.
Okay.
I don't. I mean, I have my daily life struggles that I would normally have, but I don't dwell on them.
Yeah.
And
Okay.
I just fill my mind with prayer.
Yeah.
And again, I know that sounds super cheesy, but I'm
I
not
think that's
gonna,
what you have to do when you first
I
come
don't,
back.
I mean, if something comes up and I'm like, oh, that's really going to stress me out, or like, I don't allow it to, and I just pray,
Right.
because that is my coping mechanism now.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I feel like I do the same thing. I mean, that's always my answer. But there are things in life that life happens. And though we don't worry, probably like those who don't walk with the Lord do, our flesh is still very powerful. And I think that, like in my case, I have learned, I have a little more pride than I really realized I did.
Yeah.
And my ability to have grace for things or for people, I have really realized, this really is pride, or this really is judgment, more so than it is, I think sometimes having a victim mentality is really a lot of pride. And it's a lot of things I won't get into. But so the things that I have been learning that God has been kind of showing me about myself and really showing me about my flesh that I feel needs to be understood in order to overcome it. What do you feel like you've had any of those moments where you're like, like wanting to stay home and sleep versus,
going to church on Wednesday?
Yes, right.
Wednesdays are hard.
Yeah.
God forgive me.
I want to say just to people watching, like, it isn't about church.
No.
We're using church as an example of what we do to keep our commitment to the Lord, because I'm always glad when I go. I do feel something different. I have a closet of prayer. I know that you have a closet of prayer. And there's a lot of times I think I'm just going to stay home and watch church online, and pray and just spend that time with God, because it's still a dedicated time. But I do get something when I go to church that 100%. I don't get on my own. And it's not that God isn't the same. He is, but corporate.
But you're telling your flesh, no, we're going to go.
Right.
Even if you're tired, and even if I sit there and yawn, we're going to church. I mean, and to me, that's important, because yes, there are times where I really just want to stay. I want to stay home and get in my pajamas and relax, but I'm not going to. I'm going to go to church, because you never know if that's your service that you're going to get a special blessing, or, you're going to see someone healed, or you just never know what you're going to miss out on. And wouldn't you rather be there in person than watching it online is great, and some people aren't able to come.
Right.
God bless you anyway. That's fine. God knows.
Because it's not about that.
Yeah. And God knows. But, there was one service in particular, I do remember that I didn't want to go because I was very tired, and I made myself go, and it was an amazing service. And I remember texting Angela afterwards, and I'm like, wow. Yeah. And I feel like that was, even if it was just for me, to tell me this is why you have to get your flesh under control and go to church. Yeah. If you're able, you know, and if you're not able, watch it. That's fine.
Right.
But I was so thankful that I went.
Yeah.
And I am a work in progress. I struggle with, attitude and everything else like everyone else. And I just, I pray that God helps me be nicer, because sometimes, things come out of my mouth and I'm like, wow, that was probably not necessary, but he's working on me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
yeah. And I think the determination, is so powerful, because there just is nothing else. I mean, when you really get that revelation that God is the thing that I feel that everybody is actually looking for. They are looking for it in other ways, because they don't know that they're missing it.
And that's our job, to share it.
Right.
Because they need to know that the alcohol is not helping them. It's making it worse. They're looking for the comfort and the peace that God brings.
Correct.
And they're not finding it because they don't know.
Right.
Or if they do know, they're running from it, which is 10 times worse. I know, because I did it myself.
Yeah.
I ran from it, and I wish I hadn't.
So do you know what you were running from? Like, what were your fears about what were your fears, would you say?
I don't even know. And that's the thing that makes me mad now when I think back, because I didn't have fears. I just wanted I don't even want to say easy, because my life has not been easy. I feel like it's been harder because I ran, but it was easier at the time to not have to control my flesh. I don't know. I mean, I really don't know how else to say it. It's just easier to do whatever you want. It's easier.
Yeah. So there's this preconceived idea then that if I go back to church, I have to do this and this and this and this. I have to give up this. I won't be able to do this. That I think gets in people's way. Mm-hmm. But I really think the easy way is always the wrong way. Mm-hmm. And you're right. It is so much easier.
Well, God says the road is narrow.
Right.
To follow him, the road is narrow. It's not wide.
Right.
So it's harder.
Right.
But think about what the end game is. Think about what our destination is. And it just should make it so worth it. And, it's easier to just do whatever we want. But the beauty of it to me is coming back, that I've realized, is God doesn't care what you're wearing. He just wants your heart. And
correct.
So he will change you as he sees fit. And if you're worried about not being able to, wear the clothes that you like, God will put it in your heart that you really won't care. Yeah. You won't care. You'll wear the skirt if that's what he wants for you. I mean, you will, and you won't care. Yeah. And that's the beauty of it, is as he changes you, it's not going to happen overnight, which I have learned, because I tried to jump right in both feet, and it's harder. I'm like, you know what? I want to understand why I'm doing what I'm doing, and I don't want to feel like someone's telling me. I want to feel it, and he will change you. And as he changes you, you will change. Mm-hmm. And you may not even realize it.
Right. Because he changes our heart. He puts his desire in it. And for those of you watching who may not have a similar background as us, we grew up in a very specific religion, United Pentecostal Church. And so in our church of origin, wearing skirts was what we did. And that was what we was taught. So that's what we're using as an example, to discuss this. But we're not saying this is the way you have to do it. This is the only way you have to do it. I do know that God will lead each individual to where they need to be. And there's a scripture in the Bible that I feel like I hope that the church as a whole will get to, but it says, until we come into the unity of Christ, until we all come into the unity of Christ, let us abide together in love. And I think that there are so many other churches out there that are really endeavoring to follow Jesus and really endeavoring to study and search out scripture. They are pursuing the Lord, and so we might have differences. But we are for me, we are all trying to get to the same heaven. Yeah. We are all reading the same Bible. We are all serving the same Jesus. Mm-hmm. It is not for us to tell people what to do or how to do it. It is for the Lord to work in them and to teach them and to bring them into the revelation of who he is. Because, as a therapist, I tell people all the time, I see couples, like, if this marriage is not based in love, it's obligation, and obligation never works. No. I can't serve God out of obligation. I can't go to church and do all the things that they tell me to do because of obligation. I have to do it from a heart posture. My posture towards God is that I want to please you because I love you. And in a marriage, we do what we do. We sacrifice for our spouse because we love them and we want to make them happy and we want them to love us. Right. And anything else does not work.
No, it really doesn't. And that's something that I, had to realize on my own too, because coming back was hard because I'm programmed how it was, when I was a child.
Right.
And I'm not even saying that it was different then and it's the same.
But we're different.
We're different.
Because we're older.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I look at it from a completely different viewpoint than I did when I was 10.
Right.
I know because I read my Bible that it comes from within.
Yeah.
And he changes. And I pray all the time, convict me if I'm doing something I shouldn't be, or, I want to be perfect in his eyes.
Right.
I don't want to be perfect in anyone else's eyes.
Right.
I don't care about anyone's opinion of me. And I feel like that's very important because, we are getting closer and closer to his return.
Yes.
And I want to make it. And
me
honestly,
too.
That's really all I care about.
Right.
And bringing others with me. I want everyone to make it, but we have to be focused.
Right.
And I can't be worried about what my neighbor is doing and whether God approves of that or not, because that's between my neighbor and God. That's not between me and God.
Right.
And I don't feel like it's our job to be judgmental.
Right.
So,
right. Yeah. And I think you said something so important, how you see it now versus how you see it then, because when kids grow up in trauma, often they never want to return even to the memory. So they'll come into therapy and they have been avoiding whatever trauma past they had because the memory is so painful. But in order to heal that, we have to go back to that. Yeah. And as cliche as that sounds, we hear it's cliche to have to talk about your childhood when you go to therapy, but cliches are cliches because they're true most of the time. And so any kid that's out there now as an adult, the only thought that they're having about returning to church is how it felt when they were a kid.
Right.
And they have to face that and know it's not going to be the same. If you come back now, you have a whole different viewpoint. You have a whole different experience because you're older. You understand things differently.
Yes.
You're not as innocent and naive as you were when you grew up in it. And so you have to come and have a brand new experience and then decide, okay, how is this going to feel for me? Are there things that I can come? One thing that they say in the recovery world, the AA community, is take what you want and leave the rest.
Yeah.
And I tell people that a lot when it comes to revisiting their walk with God, is that not everything you learned is probably going to serve you, but you have to just come back and get to know God where you're at today and take him at face value today, and everything else throw away. Just start. Yeah. There's a lot of really good things to that little saying, because I'm going to go to church and there's going to be things maybe that bother me, maybe not. But I have to go get what I need to get from God in that moment and leave everything else to the side.
They're distractions.
Right.
They're not important.
Just keep my eyes vertical. And I think God is the one who has to save us. We cannot save ourselves.
No.
It's got to be God's going to save us or he's not. He's either good or he isn't. He's either everything or he's nothing. Yeah. And he doesn't make mistakes.
No.
So he's going to use everything that you've been through, everything I've been through for good. And I think the beginning of it is the testimony.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree.
So where do you see your life going, Keri? What's changed for you now? How do you see the next few years playing out? Have you thought about it?
Not really.
Okay. You're still in the one day at a time.
I am living one day at a time. I don't want to think too much about the future. I'm just
good.
And I don't know if that is good, but
it is good.
I'm just living in the moment, I guess. I've been through a lot. My family has been through a lot, and we're just day by day.
Yeah.
Every day is a new day, and literally just living day by day.
I think that's a really great place to be. I was curious if God had placed any dreams or desires in your heart of where you think, like, people look for their purpose.
Yeah. I don't feel anything yet. I'm very open. My mom, before she passed, we used to have some conversations, which is one of the reasons I miss her so much. But there come the tears again. I do miss it's so hard though. She was my person that I called all the time. She told me that, and I don't even know why she told me this, but she told me that she had a dream that I was teaching.
Oh.
And I've never felt that in my own spirit. Because I don't really like to be up in front of people. That's not me.
Usually God makes us do what we're weakest at.
I know. Well, and then Sister Angela asked me to teach that ladies refresher, and I immediately said yes, because I'm like, well, I'm not going to say no to anything God related. Yes, I'll do it. I was terrified because I don't get up in front of people. I don't, that's not me.
Mm-hmm.
But I felt like I needed to step out of my comfort zone a little bit, and maybe, you never know what he has planned for you.
Yeah.
And how do you know? Like, if I had said no, I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to say no to that. So I said yes. And my mom got to come and hear me. And it was great. I really feel like God, said some things through me, but I don't know that that's my calling. I really don't feel anything special. I want him to use me if that's his will.
Yeah.
But I don't feel anything special right now.
Yeah.
So,
well, Keri, you're in a good place. That's a great place to be. It's
I'm
a great
open.
place to be. Yeah. Good. So what would you say to someone out there who hasn't returned, or who grew up in church and, maybe has decided it's not for them, or to a parent whose son or daughter is still out there wandering away? What would you say to the person and to the parent?
So to the person, I would say, don't wait. Don't put it off. Just come back. If it's one service, just come back. I guarantee you it will change you. Mm-hmm. Because as an adult, coming to church is so different than coming to church as a child. Not that it's any less important or it's more important. It's just different. And your eyes are opened a little bit more. And I feel like you've had some struggles as an adult. And just give him a chance. Come back.
Yeah, because he's the answer.
Yeah, because I don't know, if the way he brought me back was by breaking me into I had a completely broken heart. I don't know, but I'm thankful that he brought me back. But just come before he has to really get your attention.
Yeah.
You don't want that. Come back.
Yeah.
And then I would say to the parent, just keep praying.
Yeah.
Because I am living proof that prayers work.
Yeah.
My parents never stopped praying for me. And it was over 20 years that I was out, and my parents prayed and prayed and prayed and prayed. And they probably felt very discouraged.
Yeah.
Like, is God hearing us? But here I am.
Yeah.
And I'm not leaving.
God answers.
He does. Sometimes he answers in a way you don't expect, or that is not maybe favorable, but he always answers.
Yeah. And he's always good.
Yeah.
In the midst of his answer not looking the way we wanted it to look or thought it would look, if we just keep the faith and know that he sees more than what we can see, and he knows what we don't know.
Yeah.
I think with Everly, like, man, she's in heaven.
I know.
Who doesn't want to be there?
Exactly.
I would rather be there than any other place.
I've thought that myself. She's made it.
Yeah.
She's made it to where we're all striving, where we want to be. She's made it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's beautiful.
Right.
It's just, our hearts are broken.
Right.
But she has made it. She, my mom's there with her. They're together. That does bring me comfort.
Yeah.
My heart is broken for myself.
Yeah.
And for my family that we're left here to, go through this life without them.
Right.
But they've made it.
Yeah.
Everly's in heaven running around with a body that is not hurting and is not in pain. And, that's just beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm glad. It's good to see you there. It's good to see your brother back. It's good to see. I feel like the Lord is just bringing a lot of healing overall to us all.
Yeah.
And bringing our childhood, all the kids that we grew up with, he's bringing them back. And it's so nice to look across the church and see people, because we know where we've been.
Yes.
And like you said, none of us have arrived at our destination, but it's so nice to be able to be there and to be able to love each other. I'm mostly grateful to God that in his goodness, he had mercy on us to, draw us back to him and his love. And so it's kind of exciting.
It absolutely is. We live in exciting times. There's a lot happening in the world. And, he's coming back. So he's getting us all ready.
Yeah.
And he's bringing back his lost sons and daughters.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
Well, thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me.
It's good to hear your story. Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. Thank you. See you next time.